So welcome to all those who are still coming in. So I'm just going to share my screen, but just to say thank you for taking out this time today to kind of listen to what we've got to say, and hopefully it'll be a good discussion, not just hearing from Nadal, but obviously the discussion amongst ourselves as well. But just by kind of a quick welcome and introduction, just in terms of what we'll cover in today's session. So we'll just do a little bit of an intro to Let's Improve Workplace Wellbeing, particularly the council subsector, and Liz will do a little bit of talk around that. We'll then just do a check-in to see who we've got here, so it'd be great for us all to kind of introduce ourselves in the chat. And then we're going to move on to talking about workplace wellbeing frameworks, and particularly having Nadal talk about the healthy workplace framework and the good work standards. And it would be good after that if we can have a discussion just around how within councils we implement wellbeing frameworks, what works, what doesn't, and some of the challenges that we all face with that. So I'm going to pass over to Liz, and I've realised I've not introduced myself before I introduce Liz. So for those who don't know me, so I'm Sabrina Robinson, so I'm Wellbeing Lead at Essex County Council, and just really pleased to kind of help in facilitating these sessions and the discussions that we can have amongst ourselves. So I'll move over to Liz, who can introduce herself.
Hi everyone, so I'm Liz Mulville-Brewer. I was the Employee Experience Lead at Surrey County Council. I'm still staying Wellbeing, but moving into a different organisation, but still really keen to help build this public sector and specifically local council community. So this is a space for us to connect, collaborate and celebrate success and share best practice. I think public sector organisations and councils, they all share similar challenges when it comes to wellbeing. So we wanted to create a space where we could bring people together and help facilitate building wellbeing cultures, regardless of where your organisation is on their wellbeing journey. So Essex is fairly advanced with their wellbeing strategy. Surrey was less so, with the team being created about 18 months ago as a result of COVID. So I was there from fairly early stages of getting the team created and getting things going. So myself and Sabrina will essentially lead the sessions, but we really want this to have a community feel that adds value, where you can contribute and feel that you're really getting value from this. So we'll always ask for a steer on topics that would be helpful, challenges that you're facing, and really encourage active discussion. So it's not us driving it all the time. We're really keen for other people to get involved as well. So if you'd like to share a topic or join us, then yeah, just let us know. We'd love to have you with us. But yeah, thank you for joining us today.
Lovely, thank you, Liz. Oh, we've got a bit of background noise, so people can mute if they're not speaking. And I'm not going to pretend to know all about these, and Liz can jump in if need be. But obviously there are a range of organisations that Let's Improve Workplace Wellbeing work alongside. Really great, particularly in relation to us, to have PPMA very much involved, and actually attended the first session as well and supported in sharing some of the learnings that have come out of that. And I guess I'll just reiterate what Liz has said, that we just really welcome an interactive discussion, particularly for Nadal. It'd be great if you've got questions for her after her session. Do have a think about those as we go through, or pop them in the chat, and you can put hands up at the end as well. So just as by way of a little quick check-in and introduction, there isn't all that many of us. I would do a round robin, but it might take a little bit of a while. So if people wouldn't mind putting in the chat just who they are, where they're from, and if you are new or you've been to one of these sessions before, and perhaps why you've joined, just to kind of kick things off, because some people might know each other, some might not. Just give that a moment. I can see we've already got Darren. Welcome, Darren, from East Riding of Yorkshire Council. Very busy. Welcome, Darren. Welcome, Liz. I'm sure everyone knows Nud, but Let's Improve Wellbeing leadership team, but also the head of wellbeing and strategy at GoVox as well, so a new role. So we've got Joe from Warwickshire. Welcome. Good if people can put their roles, because I understand obviously not everyone will necessarily be wellbeing leads. You might be working in the wellbeing space or within public health as well, so it's kind of good to get that bit of a mix. Great to see colleagues from learning and development. Can see wellbeing and transformation, so a real good mix. I'll keep people kind of giving those introductions in the chat. So it'd be useful if you want to take notes of people that you'd like to get in contact with, and obviously we can all connect via LinkedIn, particularly via the Let's Improve Workplace Wellbeing channel as well. So just moving on then to what we're going to cover in today's session. Hopefully the slides are moving forward for you. Please let me know if they're not. But just to give a bit of an intro around workplace wellbeing frameworks, I thought I would just give a bit of a reflection around, I guess, what they mean to me and what value I think they can add, because I think we're all going to have different experiences of frameworks and different ways of using them. And hopefully that's the discussion that we can have as we go through the session. So for me at Essex County Council, we have a number of frameworks that we kind of have supporting us. A particular one that we have in place is what's called the Working Well accreditation. So that's provided by a local organisation that we work with. And that's kind of supported us in solidifying our strategic direction. So obviously we had our strategy already, but it was kind of checking, have we kind of hit all those key points? Are there other things that we need to consider? I'm really keen for us as a council to focus on that research and that evidence base, and that's both, I guess, academic research, but then also thinking about how do we get to know and collaborate with our employees, what we're doing, are we doing it based on what they want and what they need as opposed to what we think they need? So really kind of focusing on that data and background. It's also about that good practice guide, so it would be helpful to kind of keep us to account. At Essex, we have a really robust sort of wellbeing strategy governance structure, and we have our Working Well accreditation colleagues sort of supporting with that as well. So again, it's that way to give that check-in for us, and if there are new things that we need to consider, it can help us through that process. I think particularly when you're using frameworks which are more broadly used, it can be really helpful for benchmarking. For us working in councils, we can be looking at how can we benchmark against each other. I don't know, for many of you, you might be involved with the NHS, for example, around their health and wellbeing framework, and that can be quite a useful way to kind of share knowledge and expertise and also learn from their framework as well. And lastly, for me, it's about reporting. So what I mean by that is that it's all very well us doing all of these great things, but I know certainly for Essex, and I'm not saying that we're perfect at this at all, but we're really starting to think more around how do we really evidence that impact? What does that look like for us? How are we tracking those trends, being more sophisticated with our data? But then also, once we've done that, who needs to know that information? So whether that's our wider and people with transformation function, our senior leadership team, but also individual teams as well, so that they can be supported to track themselves. So I know Liz said that we're much further forward, and I wouldn't say that at all. I think we're very early on in our journey, but hopefully we can share some of what we've learned, but also it's really great for us to learn from other people as well. So that gives a little bit of an insight. So I'm now going to pass over to Nadal. So we've got Nadal from the London Borough of Richmond-on-Thames, who's going to be talking about the healthy workplace frameworks and also good work standards. I'm sure, Nadal, you can talk a little bit more about your role, because I know you work within the public health team and what that means. And then you can move on to talking about the framework. So just really pleased to have you here today, Nadal. And I'll stop sharing and I'll pass over to you.
Thank you so much, and I'm so happy to be here too. It's really nice to see how everyone's so interested, and the array of people as well. As looking at the chat, it's really amazing. So yeah, I'm in the public health team, and I work one part of my portfolio is healthy workplace. So there's an element of it within the internal organisation, but we're working alongside our occupational health colleagues to do that within the organisation, within the council, but as well as working with external organisations in the borough and encouraging that, looking at healthy workplace. And so today, part of what we're looking at is the framework that we've been using, which is a London-based framework, but is relevant across, and I've seen it across other councils in the country where they've used it and developed it for their own sort of areas, whether it's a county council or otherwise. So I'm going to share my presentation, if you give me a moment. And the first thing I wanted to start off with was an interactive sort of Mentimeter question, because when I came to look at this, when I was first asked by Nuz about presenting, we're talking about benchmarking. And I was thinking quite a lot, like, what is benchmarking? What does it mean? And how am I going to relate it to this sort of presentation? So if you could go onto Menti, you could use your phone or your laptop, whatever you find easiest, and use the code that's on the screen. So 5575 2816, and it can just be a couple of words or anything that when you think of benchmarking, what comes to your mind, particularly around healthy workplace. And what I'll do now is just share my screen of the Mentimeter so we can see the comments coming up. Okay, so we've got some, oops. I just wanted to get that a bit bigger. Yeah, we've got some stuff coming up. So as a starting point or as a comparison to organizations in the same sector, data, understanding how well your workplace is doing in comparison to others, standard of practice, standardization, really, really good. Measuring yourself against best practice, comparison and structure, and then comparison, evidence and reporting. Yeah, setting a level of where things are within a construct, yes. Assessing yourself against other organizations or your own data. Managing organizations' expectations. So you've got quite a cool, nice array of things there, and I'll share that in the notes when that comes around to everybody else. So when I was thinking about benchmarking as well, I was thinking, how useful is it? What's the purpose? Because there was I also looked at some like evidence around public health. How did they use it? And there has been some. Does it actually help health and well-being? Because sometimes it can be seen as like a government tool to enforce static, like competitive performance indicators. So I was looking at it in that aspect as well, and then comparison, which a lot of you said as well, but then is it how do you compare organizations who are like for like? So it has to be standardized, so you've got to consider that as well. And how do you standardize that? Is it the same or better than evaluation? And what are you benchmarking? Are you benchmarking the actions that you do, or are you benchmarking the outcomes that come from the actions that you're putting in? So you need to think about what you're comparing. And maybe it's a process of both. You need to look at both outcomes and also what you are doing as an organization. And then, of course, using frameworks and standards, especially when they're based around evidence, is a really good benchmarking tool. And I think that's one of the reasons that we're having this session today. So I'm going to move on to, I'm just going to bring my PowerPoint back up and go to the next slide. Yeah. So the London Healthy Workplace Award, just wanted to kind of give an overview of the benefits of it. And as a council ourselves, we went through all the different levels. We went through all up to excellence. And the benefits, it's, you can assess, as we were talking about, organisation against the independent set of standards, which we'll kind of have a quick overview of. You can see what your organisations are already doing and if there are any gaps. And you can also, it's just using a evidence-based blueprint that can help you design some of your programs, and it has a structure, helps you to give you that structure. So what is the framework itself? One of the other things that are really good about the framework is that it has different levels. So more relevant to our setting, I'd say that we'd be looking at foundation, achievement, and excellence. So you've got a comparison that you can make across levels, which I think is really, really helpful. So and each of the frameworks has different kind of criteria compared to that. And then this is the model of the healthy workplace is designed across 3 pillars, which is the outer circle. So corporate support for well-being, mental health and well-being, healthy lifestyle and promotion. And each of these pillars have standards, 3 standards each. And then within those standards, you have criteria that you've got to look at as an organization. So as an example, I've pulled out one example. I'm not sure if it's big enough in your on the screen, but the example that I've pulled out, and these will be shared afterwards, so you can see the document in full. But this is an example of pillar 4, organizational policies and culture, and within that you've got criterias, and in this example they give you the criteria, and it gives you some examples of what you can also be doing within your organization relevant to that particular criteria. And it's also got links to resources as well that you could use. And so you can look at the criteria and see, is our organization doing that? And it's a good way kind of to stock take. So each of those standards in that previous slide will have criteria along each of them, and they would develop as you go across the different levels from foundation to excellence. So I thought it'd be helpful also to kind of see that progression. Just as an example, I just picked out physical activity, and you can see in foundation, the criteria is more about signposting rather than actually having stuff in place within the organization. And then that is developed even further with having specific things within achievement, and then excellence takes it that next step level where you've got, you know, active travel plans as well within your organization. So you can see how it's progressing within one of those criteria. Now I'm going to move on to the good work standard. So the good work standard was, and this is different because obviously depending on the area that you're in. Currently, in London, the boroughs are encouraged to use the good work standard. The good work standard uses the healthy workplace framework as part of their workplace wellbeing pillar, but it also includes other areas which are relevant to health, wider determinants of health, such as fair pay and conditions, skills and progression, diversity and recruitment. And often within our borough, at least, we would use them both side by side. And it was previously as well considered the best way to do it, because the healthy workplace framework had a more broader workplace element to it than it does in the good work standard. But you could use them both together, or you could use them separately. So you've got the 4 pillars: fair pay and conditions, workplace wellbeing, skills and progression, and diversity and recruitment. So I've just pulled out similar to the other one as well. And again, these will be shared. And I just think Liz shared something in the chat. There's also the link to it too. But you can see here, it's a similar sort of structure where you've got your foundation, achievement and excellence, and you've got your criteria against each of those pillars that I was in the previous slide. So that's kind of an overview of it. I wanted to spend more time in discussion, so I thought the next slide goes into sort of next steps. So one of the ways that we used this internally, and it was advised as well, was to create a spreadsheet to help map, and I can share that spreadsheet as well. I'll share it in a minute on the screen too, so you can kind of visualize what it looks like. It's just kind of having all the criteria there, and you can RAG rate how your organization's doing, and that way you can see, well, actually we've got a lot of sort of amber or reds in this pillar, and this should be our focus for this year, kind of thing. And that can help you really visualize where you are as an organization. To take it one step further, as we were discussing previously about benchmarking, you could even include a column for outcomes. And it's quite, if you're at that beginning stage, it's a really good, it's a really good start to even start to be thinking about the outcomes at this stage, because then you'll have an extra measure that you can be using as part of your evaluation. So what are the outcomes that you're hoping to achieve with the intervention that you're putting in place? And then also there is a link which is in here, which is the What Works Wellbeing have developed some wellbeing benchmarks. Essentially, it's a set of questions that you could ask your the employees in the organisation, just to get kind of a sense check of how their well-being is, and you'll be able to benchmark it with the averages that they have on their survey, so you could have a look at that as well. So I'm just going to stop presenting here and just quickly show you the spreadsheet, because I think it's quite useful to I myself am quite a visual person, so I find it much easier if I see something. So this is an example of it. So along the bottom you've got all the different all the different standards, and then against here you have the criteria, and you can kind of put in some of the existing evidence you have, and then start RAG rating alongside, and there you're developing that sort of mapping that you need. And that template can will also be shared, so you can adapt it and change it as you wish. Add a column for outcomes if you like. So that's kind of a whistle-stop tour of the framework. But if you've got any questions, have any thing that you'd like me to go into a bit more detail, do let me ask. Put your hands up, put it in the chat, however you prefer.